Hi everyone, my name is Brittany. I'm an advisor in the Pre-Health and Pre-Law Advising Office, and today we're going to be talking about how to decide where to apply to law school. And we have Travis over here. If you could
Hi,
talk a little bit about yourself.
I'm Travis Grover. I'm a senior here at UCF on pre-law, and I just sent out my early application to one university and kind of been through this process before, so just here to give a student perspective on kind of the whole experience.
And thank you for those of you who are tuning in on Instagram. You have the option to ask some questions, and we'll try to get to those probably closer to the end of the presentation. Okay, so we'll get started. So some objectives, basically what we're going to be learning in this workshop today. But ultimately, when you're thinking about going to law school and the different things that you're thinking about when you're deciding where you want to be going, you want to be making sure that you're getting opportunities that really apply to you and that you're really excited about. Another big thing is getting the most value from the time and money that you're going to be putting into that law degree, because it's at least 3 years and a lot of money, so you want to be making sure that you're getting what you want. So these are the kind of main categories of those priorities or factors that we're going to be looking at, and then the different things kind of associated with those throughout the presentation. So your professional priorities. So these are going to be things that you really want to consider when you're thinking about yourself as a professional in the law field. So kind of thinking about yourself after law school. The academic component, so this is going to be things that you want to consider what's going to help you thrive academically in the classroom, because law school is very intense, and you want to make sure that you are looking for certain things in your programs that are going to be beneficial for yourself in your academic setting. Financial, so we already talked a little bit about the amount of money that goes into a law degree, so thinking about different things associated with the cost and the finances and that component of pursuing law school. And personal, so making sure that you are happy where you are, thinking about your personal well-being and if you are comfortable in the certain settings that you're looking in for school that you want to be attending. Okay, so that professional priorities. So things to consider when you're thinking about professional preparation. So one thing is going to be the bar pass rate. So this is really thinking about looking at programs and looking at their bar passage. This is a good indication of, or it can be a good indication of, how is that program preparing their students to pass the bar. And if you want to be practicing as a lawyer, you're going to have to pass the bar exam. So that is something to think about. Another one is going to be employment rate. So this is thinking post that law degree, what is the rate of employment that these graduates from XYZ program are getting jobs at? Because ideally after a program you want to be employed and working. Employment region, this is another thing to think about. You can kind of see, depending on schools, if students or graduates from those programs tend to stay within the region where they went to school, or if they tend to be employed elsewhere, and just kind of thinking about your personal, if you want to stay within the region of the school or kind of go outside of that. Employment type. So this is going to be looking at, do the majority of graduates from these programs, do they tend to go to large law firms, small firms? Do they tend to go into government or public interest? So thinking about where your interests are and if that's something that you're thinking about. Another thing is specialty practice areas. So if you already have an idea at this point of certain specialty areas that you're thinking about that you want to specialize in post law school, looking at different schools' programs and seeing if they have any specialty options for you, whether that's coursework or concentration certificates, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. The strength or accessibility of career services. So really seeing, does the school offer career services or career development for their graduates? And what sorts of things do they offer when they say they offer career services?
Cool.
Yeah.
Can I add something to just a couple of these?
Of course, yeah.
So I know one of the things she mentioned is employment region. That's definitely a good one when you're researching your schools. Because say you want to practice in like the Rocky Mountain region or upstate New York, something like that, it's kind of important to consider, okay, if I apply to maybe a school that's really well known in the Southeast, like let's say like Stetson University, they're really well known in that region, but then to apply for maybe employment in something like Colorado or in California, maybe the school's not as well known, and that being said, your networking through Stetson is primarily going to be in the Southeast within that school's region. So it kind of makes things easier, like that bullet point says, is kind of look, every school is usually release some sort of report about their employment statistics after their graduates, whether it's in public interest or private firms or something like that. And you can really see, okay, the graduates from this school really stayed local and worked for government or worked for private firms. So it's kind of something to really consider. And all the schools disclose that information on LSAC or their own websites. It's something you can really take advantage of.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that, because these are some of the resources where you can actually find this information. So, has everyone heard of the ABA required disclosures before? Maybe some, yes, no. So these are actually the American Bar Association. They are required to disclose certain information. So the employment outcomes, this could be something that you could look at too, and this document actually shows you 10 months after graduation, where are these graduates employed? And you can see how many of their graduates are employed and in what different settings, and if they're still seeking employment. Another thing is going to be that bar passage rate. So within the ABA required disclosure, you can also look up specific programs and the bar passage rate, and you can also compare that to the state pass rate, and you can kind of see how they're doing compared to other schools. And then another thing is going to be going to lsac.org or the school's websites. So especially if you're thinking about different things like specializing, or if the programs offer internships or practicums, going to the school's websites, you can look and see if they offer those different things. Things like concentrations and certificates, that's going to be more academic based, something you would take coursework in. But they also might offer experiential training, and that's where you would see those internships, externships, clinics, or practicums. Okay, so the next one is going to be thinking about your academic performance in law school. So, admission credentials of the student body. So this is really considering how selective is the program. What sorts of GPA and LSAT scores are they looking for? What are those averages that they're accepting? Ratio of students to faculty. So thinking about, do you thrive in a larger class, or do you prefer more of that one-on-one or more individualized experience? Class size, faculty reputation and credentials. Maybe you're interested in certain specialties and you know of programs where there's a specific faculty member or members that are really big and well known in that specific area, or just in general learning more about the faculty and what their reputation is, what their background is, and how they could further help your academic success. Journals and publications, clinics, curriculums. So the journals and publications, some schools are going to offer that. So if you are interested in being able to attend a school that does something like that, or even looking at if you can contribute, if like writing and writing those academic type journals is something that's important to you, that would be something to look at. Clinics we talked about previously, but that would be one of those more experiential options. But each school in general offers a variety of clinics, but some of them are gonna offer them geared towards certain specialty areas, and others it might be different.
Yeah, so I guess just one thing to add for, especially like admissions credentials. Everybody wants to go to a Harvard and like an NYU, everyone wants to have that, you know, those dream schools and that sort of thing. But it's kind of healthy to, I would say, really consider your options post LSAT once you're done with that process, because then you can really gauge, okay, here's where I am. Obviously you can research these schools throughout your entire time in undergrad, but you don't really know where is a possible like acceptance range until you've gotten your LSAT back. And you don't really want to obsess over, okay, like if I don't get this score, my career's over, or that sort of thing. So it's just that's not a healthy mentality. So it's easier to kind of look at those admissions credentials really after you've got your LSAT done. And then like she said, if there's something you're really passionate about, if it's say like elder law, you want to help like older Americans, there's a lot of like externships and clinics that do stuff like that. There's veterans law. There's things like environmental policy. So there's different schools that offer different things, and they're very public about what they're known for on all their LSAC pages and then their actual website. So if that's something that you're really interested in, and like I know speaking on faculty reputation, if you tour certain schools, sometimes they'll tell you that they have justices or judges that come in. I know GW, George Washington Law in DC has Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas come and teach classes. So if that's something that you're really passionate about, then that research kind of gives you, a focus like, oh, I love constitutional law. Here's someone who's huge in that field, and that would be quite an experience to learn from. So, but I think my point really with just what I wanted to add is that don't obsess over schools based off of an LSAT you haven't taken yet. Be very realistic about it,
Yeah, good point. So thinking about those academic factors, here's some resources to look at those different areas. So back to that ABA required disclosures, there is something called the Standard 509 report, and this gives you a lot of information about the school. Things like their LSAT and GPA percentiles, the 25th, 50th, and 75th percentiles. It gives you information on scholarships and tuition.
Yeah.
It gives you so much information.
Yeah, it breaks down, down to even like ethnicities of students, so like the percentages of like, every different culture and group that's there. It really does give you everything. It gives you things like age range of students. It breaks down everything about their incoming class and their present class, so you can kind of see if maybe you're an outlier, you're younger than like the normal student, or if you're part of the law school crowd for that school. So it's kind of cool.
And then another thing is going to be, again, researching schools by lsac.org or the school's websites. Looking at, most schools have information about their faculty members, so you can kind of look and see a little bit more about them. And you can also look at, like I said before, the clinics that they offer. Sometimes they'll even post information about their curriculum that they offer, or different maybe elective courses you could take. So that would be something to look at too. Okay, financial. So thinking about that financial commitment that law school is going to incur. So cost of attendance, this is going to be like really thinking about how much is this going to cost to attend this program. Tuition, books, all of that kind of stuff. And this is also, I have a couple resources where we can talk more about cost. Availability of scholarships. So does the school offer their students scholarships? Do they offer things like merit-based, need-based scholarships? Thinking back to that 509 report, you can actually look and see the percentage of their student body who are getting grants and scholarships, all the way up through a little bit of aid, and you can also see through students who are getting like full tuition, the percentage of students who received full tuition. Similar or along with cost of attendance would be cost of living in the region. So thinking about the cost of living, what it could take to move to that area if you're not from that area, and what it would potentially cost if you are living in that area and only attending school, not being able to work during that time. loan repayment assistance. So some schools might offer some sort of loan repayment program or some sort of support with that. So just, again, more research on if that's something that's important to you. And then similar bar study support if you are thinking about studying for the bar and you want a school that offers some sort of support in that way, whether it's scholarships for study materials or just helping you out in that aspect. Anything you want to talk about with financial?
I mean, it's kind of obvious. Obviously, you think about the cost of any school you're going to attend, but it really does come down to evaluating kind of just, I guess, your own fiscal responsibility in a sense. Because let's say you attend a school in a densely packed like metropolitan area. Say you go to New York City, say you go to DC. Obviously, cost of living there is very high. The tuition for those programs is usually very high. And while no doubt they're great schools, it's things you very seriously have to consider because obviously loans and that sort of thing. You're going to be taking out loans not just for, like you said, like tuition, that sort of thing, but they give you loans for cost of living, so your housing, your food, your just general cost of life, and those things stack up. So it's something you really want to consider. Where okay, if I am applying to these very expensive areas, just be realistic. Keep that in mind because loans, I mean, you got to pay that back. So eventually, someone will come calling for that.
So some more resources for that. So we already kind of talked about those 509 reports, and they do offer information about tuition on there. Another really cool resource is Access Lex Institute. Has anyone heard of that before? A few of you. They have a lot of financial education resources on their website, which could be super helpful. I know one of my favorites is the loan calculator. You can actually like type in if you have any undergraduate loans, and then you can kind of get an idea of you could actually put in the school and it'll kind of determine all of those different tuition, cost of living, and then it could give you an idea of what that loan repayment could look like.
Yeah, if I can add to that too, on LSAC's website, which is something we all have to register to apply to these schools and take your LSAT, they offer constant workshops and forums and that sort of thing, and a lot of them are focused towards it's literally breaking down the costs of going to law school, and they bring in things like that, and they talk about kind of just smarter and healthy financial plans as you go towards that. It's never thrilling to talk about money and how much you may owe or you may be granted from a law school, but they really do break it down at these forms provided by the organization that gets you into these schools. And they do break it down in a way that's kind of simple and easy to understand because it can get kind of convoluted, a little scary at times.
And then that fourth one, the personal priorities. So really thinking about your happiness and well-being during law school, because it's such a intense 3 years. You want to make sure that you are adding in things that could hopefully make that transition more enjoyable for you. So thinking about things like geography, so where is the school located? An example being if you were born and raised in Florida and you're looking at schools up north, those winters could be pretty wintry. So really thinking about, is that something that you could handle going into that? Size of the school, so thinking about if you would be happier with a really large institution. Here at UCF, one of the largest institutions, so thinking how well did you thrive in that sort of sense, or are you looking for something a little smaller, a little more close-knit? Proximity to family and friends. So again, where is that school located? Are you thinking about going to schools here where you currently live, or thinking about going further away where you might not have any friends or family in that area? And really considering not being close to that support system, how that could impact you. Culture and feel. So this is really thinking about, are you comfortable at this school? What sorts of things do they have for students to help them feel included? Is it a really competitive culture, or is everyone more like family? So thinking about those things. Student clubs and organizations. Do the schools offer different ways for students to get involved, whether that's law related or non-law related, and looking at things that might help you get involved in things that are involved in your interests, maybe outside of law. Student support resources or services, so things like, do they offer career services like we talked about before, mental health support, health care, what sorts of things do they have in place to support their students? And then this is another extracurricular involvement, so do they have like intramural sports or clubs in things that aren't law related? Oops. Anything?
So a lot of these things, if you're, obviously it's kind of gauged a lot of this because it's personal, so it's easier, I think, to tour law schools. They want you to come, so they constantly offer free tours, and those are almost always given by law students, usually like a 2L or a 3L. And they can really elaborate on that sort of thing. I know, for example, I really don't want to live in South Florida, so I won't apply to those schools. But that being said, I've toured schools in Georgia and South Carolina and that sort of thing. And they really kind of tell you, like, here's some of the nice things about the school, here's some of the student organizations, that are here, and here's some of the things that we wish we had. The nice thing is they're students, students are usually pretty blunt with each other. They don't, dress up the school. They'll say, here's what I like and here's what I hate. And they're probably the best way to really figure out, if it's a comfortable fit, because you're gonna be there 3 years, and arguably some of the more difficult 3 years of your academic life. So you should at least make sure that it's a comfortable environment that you're in. You don't wanna hate everything about the school and the city and that sort of thing. You wanna at least like some things.
So some of those resources, the LSAC official guide to ABA approved law schools. So you could actually, they have awesome information, key information about law schools on there. And they also, within that official guide, they even link to the school's websites and the ABA required disclosures. So you can get that all from there. But then doing some more digging, you could look at schools' individual websites and get an idea of like, where are they located, what the culture is like, what sorts of things do they offer to their students.
Yeah, LSAC really is your best friend because they provide all the information and the links to everything that you would want to know about the school. So it really does make things easy.
Yeah. Okay, so we covered a lot of different factors that you could really be considering when you're thinking about applying to different law schools. But depending on your personal priorities and what you really want to be getting out of a school, those might not all be important to you specifically. So we have this, it's called Before the JD Report. This was actually a survey done on undergraduate students, or I guess it was done when they were in their first year of law school, but it's really looking at their views on law school and what different factors they really considered when they were applying to schools. So this is a figure that I wanted to pull from the report, but this actually shows the top 5 with the highest percentage of the surveyors ranking them as extremely important. So you can see at the top there, location of school was number 1, followed by financial aid support, employment rate, quality of faculty, and then school ranking, which with school ranking, that's kind of similar to thinking about like GPA and LSAT requirements. But kind of in general, these are some of the top things that if you aren't quite sure where to start with looking at different schools, maybe starting with these different factors and really thinking about what they mean to you, and that might give you a better indication of how you can view different schools and the different priorities that you have with them. Bless you. So some ways to get more information, talking with us in the pre-health and pre-law advising office. We are there to help you throughout the whole process. So if you ever have questions about things like what school should I be applying to, you can always come and talk with us about that. Attending free law school forum. So I know here at UCF we hold one, or Phi Alpha Delta holds one in the spring every year. And I know this week there's one in Miami on Saturday. Is anyone going to that?
That's the official LSAC one, and I can say I've attended before. It's really helpful. I think it's a $20 registration fee. I don't remember exactly. It was a small fee, but there's quite literally over 100 schools. There's tons of workshops that break down everything from law school, and it's deans of admissions holding these workshops. It's all sorts of actual law admissions staff who break down everything for you. So it's very helpful. I would recommend it.
We already talked about the law school's websites and LSAC's official school guides. And with the LSAC official school guide, there's actually a filter where you can put in your undergraduate GPA and your LSAT score if you have one, or you could put in any LSAT score. But you can actually look and see like likelihood of admission based off of those scores. So it's a pretty cool tool. Some more resources for you. So I actually printed out some handouts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have the exact right number. Okay, perfect. So I'll pass these. But this is a handout. It goes through pretty much most of what we covered, but it's something that you can do kind of personally. So you can actually go through those different factors that we talked about and check them off based off of your own personal. We have enough, right? I think so.
Yeah, I got you.
Really quick, could you just go back to the one side, it seems the last, are you able to just?
This one?
Yeah, I just did my early admissions.
Cool. Okay,
Just
yes.
one
yeah.
more, or those, I think you are missing.
Oh, I'm missing one.
Yeah.
You can have mine.
You can have
Yeah.
No, it's fine. Yeah. All right.
Okay, you can always reserve it, or I can print you one afterwards. So that is a handout I provided, and that's offered through Access Lex, one of those resources I mentioned earlier. They have a lot of, I would definitely check out their website. They have a lot of stuff on there that could be really helpful. LSAC's official guide, which we did talk about. Analytics by Access Lex. This is another really cool tool. You can actually look, you can compare up to 5 schools at a time, and there are so many different things that you could click on to actually compare side by side. So would definitely recommend that one. And then Law School Transparency, that's another one that offers, in the name, transparent reports about different law schools. Any other resources that you found helpful?
Well, obviously coming to the pre-law office is really helpful, but one of the things that I think that they taught or kind of informed me about is that is really deciding what schools you're going to pick. So when you purchase a package on LSAC, which is what you have to do to apply to a school, you can either buy a 1 report package or a 6 report package. You're going to always want to buy the 6 report package. It's more bang for your buck. It's like, I think it's like $500, and the 1 report package is like $300. But my point with this is that with that, you're essentially buying packages to apply to 6 schools. That's what that 6 is for. When you sit down with advising here, your advisor can talk with you about the probabilities really and the schools that may be within your range based off your GPA and your LSAT. And one of the things that the pre-law department taught me is that you can usually kind of base it off, here's 2 reach schools, as in 2 schools that maybe it's a little harder to get into based off of your scores, and then 4 kind of certain schools where that, okay, you're within a comfortable admissions range, and what's going to change is the amount of financial aid that's offered. But that was really something that I'd recommend making sure to schedule an appointment with your advisor here, because they can really help you clarify, okay, my scores have me really close to getting into UF and getting a scholarship with it. So I'll put this as my reach school. And then my scores have me really close with, let's say like Miami, and it's very comfortable. So that's a certainty school. You know what I mean? So it just kind of makes it a little easier to gauge, because obviously you want to shoot for those really, your own individual dream schools. So you can put those as your reach, but you also need to be certain about, okay, here's where I know I can get in, You don't want to apply to 6 schools that are really hard to get into and then not get into any of them. That would be heartbreaking.
Yeah. So here's all of our information. If you haven't been to our office or don't already know where we are literally the next door to the left. But you can always come and meet with an advisor, whether that's in a full appointment or a walk-in appointment. And definitely going to our website, lots of awesome resources there. Any questions? Yes.
Are you not in Farrell Commons anymore, or do you also have an office there? Or is it?
We actually moved, yeah.
Oh,
So
just moved, okay.
yeah, we moved last fall. So
Oh,
we've
okay.
been here since last fall. But yeah, we're literally right next door.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yes.
It's not like a question, just a suggestion. So whether you guys are going to like the Miami Law Forum this Saturday, or you guys choose to go to our forum, like the Phi Alpha Delta one, they give a lot of waiver fees
Yeah,
for the
fee waivers.
applications there. Yeah. So I highly suggest like going to either one and then getting those fees for the applications if you want to.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. A lot of schools will typically offer application fee waivers, which will be different from your law school reports or your
Yeah.
CAS, but it would often,
And it mitigates the cost, because
Exactly.
it can get really expensive, because you have to pay to register to take your LSAT, you have to pay to buy what's called like the report package, which is where they put together your transcripts, your letters of recommendation, all that sort of thing. And you have to pay for that, and then you have to additionally pay to a school that may have an application fee. So it's really worth it to just show up to one of those forums, even if you don't stay the entire time. Go up and speak to a representative of a school that you're interested with, because they'll just hand you the fee waiver. It's almost always just a code or something that you apply, and that's $60 to $100 that you save from your pocket. Because believe me, it stacks up. The price can just get heavier and heavier.
They have those like every year.
The law forms?
Yeah.
Yeah, they usually do. I think LSAC does 2 a year. Phi Alpha Delta does ours in the spring, which I recommend that. I'm a little biased because we're officers in it, but it's yeah. And that one's at Student Union, but sorry, everyone's like, we got answers for it. But they offer those I think 2 times a year in Florida, and then a lot of student organizations like Phi Alpha Delta and ones at other universities do them throughout the year. I mean, I know even the legal studies department here at UCF, they just did Legal Week, or that's upcoming.
that's this week.
That's
Is it
this week,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, so they have
If you want a handout.
that flyer,
Yeah.
yeah. I think there's like 8 schools coming to that, and I guarantee there'll be something like a fee waiver there too.
For the it's just
If anyone
like
else wants
one
one,
contract.
I will print one for you.
We do have a question from Instagram.
Okay, I'll take the Instagram one.
Okay, sorry. When are other forums? So can you clarify on Instagram which forums you're referring to?
So for Phi Alpha Delta, we have one February 26th, and that one is from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m.
And that's
So
the
that's
Student Union.
the Student Union in the Pegasus Ballroom. So that's one they could attend.
To find out the LSAC ones, like the official law school acceptance council, whatever, admissions council, I can't remember what that acronym's for. To find that out is to go on their website, and they'll have it listed for the year. And that's just, I think it's lsac.org or
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
lsac.org.
Yeah, and they'll be able to give you a full calendar for everything they're doing for the year.
Yep, and the one that we've been referring to on Saturday, that's in Miami, and that's offered through LSAC. Question?
When's the best time to take the LSAT?
So the best time to take the LSAT, it really kind of depends. Ideally, you'll take it prior to when you're planning to apply. But depending on when you feel most comfortable to take it, they've added dates throughout the years. Right now they offer one in June, July, September, October, November. And typically the applications are gonna open up, they've opened up in September, so a lot of them have been opening right now. So thinking about it in terms of those timelines, that's a good, but it all students personally, like individually, so I would say definitely make an appointment and kind of talk about timeline with an advisor could be
So, like she said, it's very dependent on your personal schedule. So admissions for law schools begin in like kind of in early fall, like she said, they just started, and that's your early admissions. Regular admissions are usually like from January to almost, they go, yeah, and sometimes they last all the way to like midsummer for certain schools. It's kind of crazy how long that process can be for some schools. But my personal experience with what I did with it is I took it at the end of spring last year, and then I took it again in the summer. I took it twice just to see, you know, my own comfort and how I could improve and that sort of thing. But generally, that's what I would recommend, just in my personal experience, because by doing that, you have all your scores done for your LSAT. If you're comfortable with those scores, you're done by August. So the only thing that you have left to do to apply to all schools is get your letters of recommendation in and get your transcripts in, and then you just send it out. Oh, I'm sorry, in a personal statement. You do have to do that as well.
And all the applications.
Yeah, obviously, in the applications to the schools, I'm sorry. But that's just my personal recommendation, is try and maybe knock it out in spring and summer. Plus, usually your class workload is lighter in the summer. If you're taking summer classes, maybe that's a little different, but that's just been my experience. Okay.
But yeah, at the end of the day, it'll really depend.
On yourself,
Because
yeah.
we have students taking them kind of throughout the fall, so it just depends.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there's really no bad time to take it.
Any other questions, either in the room or on Instagram? Okay, well, thank you all for coming today. If you have questions and you don't quite want to ask them in front of the group, totally fine. I'm going to stick up here for a little bit and you can come up and talk with us.